We haven't been super into this story because we've had a lot of stuff going on. But, we talked last week to Rob Campbell, the head of the new, don't worry about its Maori name, the new health authority, the reformed centralised health system. Rob Campbell went down screaming in a ball of flames after criticising the national government and then being told, well, you can't do that if you're the chair of a politically neutral health authority. And he said, stuff you. And then we noted he was also the chair of the Environmental Protection Authority. He said, stuff you. So Rob gone burger, fired, out the door. And then some funny stuff has happened in the last week, because then Steve Maharey, a former government minister who honestly has been riding first class on the gravy train ever since, I think he was Vice-Chancellor of Massey University, and his current comfortable little sinecures, he is the chair of the ACC, the Accident Compensation Corporation, which has millions of dollars at its disposal and is a massive concern, and Pharmac, which spends hundreds of millions of dollars on drugs a year and is quite controversial in itself. Steve Maharey, though, has apparently been writing in media, I think it was the Herald, columns about politics in which he criticises the National Party. And of course he would, because he's like Labour royalty, Steve Maharey. He was a minister. He could have been Prime Minister if there hadn't been third or fourth wave feminists and Helen Clark took him out. But Steve Maharey then says, oh, look, I've been political too. No one had noticed that he'd written any columns, which gives you an idea of how good they were. But he goes to the minister and apologises because he hasn't even been caught yet for doing exactly what Rob Campbell did, being politically bent in a public role. And it seems the government has said, oh, that's all right, because you told us that you've been a bad boy and you said sorry, unlike Rob Campbell who said stuff you. So it looks like Steve Maharey, despite the fact he's committed exactly the same sin as Rob Campbell, breached exactly the same code of conduct, we have this massive hypocrisy. And by the way, Ruth Dyson, who's head of something, and another Labour gravy train rider, Ruth says she hasn't even read the code of conduct about political neutrality and she doesn't care. I think, though, the Maharey case is really interesting. And Steve offered his resignation, but he's not going to go through with it. That was just to make things look good. One person with a unique perspective on Steve Maharey and people in public service roles is Christine Rankin, the former head of course, social welfare, who was controversially dismissed and I think sued the government for her dismissal. Christine Rankin wasn't dismissed because she did anything overtly political. I think she was largely dismissed because Trevor Mallow couldn't handle the way she dressed. She joins us now. Christine, lovely to have you on the program again.
Good morning. And I wasn't dismissed. My contract just was not renewed. They couldn't dismiss me because my results were off the scale. They were so good. So they tried and tried, but they couldn't do it.
Now, you took them to court, right?
I did. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. No. Costs a hell of a lot of money. But look, I had to get my story out there, my side of the story. It was really important for me to tell that, and I was banned from speaking to the media. The government created a story around me and about me, and there was nothing I could do about it. He gave me specific instructions.
This is while you were in the job. This is while you were in the job.
While I was in the job, I was not allowed to speak to the media at all. Now, eventually, I did disobey that, getting towards the end, because what they'd done to me was just so horrific, and it went on for such a long period of time. Now, when you say him,
you're talking about Steve Maharey himself.
Steve Maharey. And Ruth Dyson was my other minister.
Oh, this is too good. This is too rich.
Awful to work. Awful to work for, both of them.
All right. So Steve Maharey wanted to completely neuter you, and when you took them to court, he turned up and gave evidence against you, didn't he?
Yes, he did, and I remember the media, I think it was Barry Soper, counted how many times he rubbed his nose giving evidence, which is around lying. He really laughed his way through it. He said he couldn't remember anything. I'm sorry, I can't remember that. Because his treatment of me and Ruth Dyson's treatment of me was absolutely disgraceful, and it was every single day. It would never be put up with now.
Yeah, all right. And basically, I think in evidence, I've seen someone republish something. He fundamentally said that you had to go because the way you dressed detracted from your role.
Yes, he did. Running a welfare agency, I shouldn't have looked so glamorous. That was his view. I wasn't allowed to wear, well, he'd challenged me about wearing designer glasses, for example, and I'd say, but Minister, you're wearing Hugo Boss glasses. He would say, you and I are two totally different units, Christine. I can do what I like. You can't.
Did you ever in your job, Christine, write or publish anything that was politically partisan against the government or against the opposition?
No, I didn't. I mean, you know, as a public servant, you're not allowed to do that. And I am really, well, no, I'm not surprised that they're leaving him in his job. He knows where the bodies are buried. And as you say, he is royalty in terms of the Labour Party, which says something about them, doesn't it? And especially if Ruth Dyson's in the same category.
Well, Ruth Dyson says she hasn't even bothered reading the impartiality code of conduct, because obviously those rules don't apply to people like her and Steve Maharey. In a strange way, in a strange way, Christine, this makes Rob Campbell look in some ways like a noble warrior. He broke the rules. He said, I broke the rules. I should be allowed to break the rules. If you want to fire me, bugger you, I'm off.
You know, my experience of working with two different government groups, if you like, National and Labour. National had a line that they would never cross. I used to call them 20 years ago gentlemen. They had morals and ethics to a degree. Labour would jump over that line without a second thought. I remember giving Steve Maharey answers to questions, parliamentary answers, and he would throw them at me and say, if you think I'm going to say that in the House, you can think again. Go and fix it. And that would mean we couldn't tell the truth.
Do you think Steve Maharey is an appropriate person? Do you think Steve Maharey is an appropriate person to chair the ACC and chair Farm Act?
I have no idea why he would be. I really don't. I don't think he was. I don't think he performed very well, except to, over a long period of time, make sure that I left the job. But I don't think he had a distinguished career as a minister. It's not the way I see it, but I am biased. Why
are you biased, Christine?
Because he treated me absolutely appallingly. Now, that was on Helen Clark's instruction. There is no doubt about that, and he used to tell me that very clearly. But it was... You know, someday someone's going to look back at what happened during that period and how appalling it actually was. This led a nation to hate someone to the point I had my own police protection squad because they really thought someone was going to kill me.
Yeah.
And the other side of the story was dramatically different.
Yeah, and you weren't allowed. I mean, I can remember literally kind of hounding you as a reporter at Radio New Zealand, ringing you like 15 times a day trying to get comment. We didn't know that you'd been banned from talking. And we couldn't figure out what was.
Tell you that.
Yeah, that's right. But Christine, you've gone on. I mean, you've gone on. You're still involved in politics. You've got a good life. You're living up there in Taupo. You've been involved in the new airport or the new airport terminal up there at Taupo that's opening?
Absolutely. We're opening it today. Yes, look, I've had a great life. I've gone on to be a chief executive several times. I've run charities. I've run a political party. I've had my own radio show. I've done all kinds of things. But a lot of people would never have survived what happened to me. They would have killed themselves. And they couldn't have taken it. And it just happened that because of my past life, I was able to hold on because I knew what I'd achieved. I knew what I'd done, and I wasn't going to let them destroy me, and I've never gone away. Much to their horror, I have never gone away, and I won't until I die.
So you say Steve Maharey shouldn't have kept his jobs. This is a double standard.
Totally double standard. I don't think Rob Campbell should have done what he did, but Steve Maharey and Ruth Dyson are in exactly the same position, and Ruth's interview last night was totally arrogant. Like, don't ask me. It's none of your business. I'm not accountable to you. Well, yes, she is.
Well said, Christine. We must get you back on for a Free Speech Friday soon too. Thank you very much. And
Lovely.
I know you're busy this morning. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us and share that with us. Fascinating stuff.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. That is Christine Rankin. She's now Taupo City Councillor, Taupo Councillor. And you might remember the controversy. Basically, she took on social welfare and, man, she was a breath of fresh air. She herself had been, if you like, through the system, and Labor hated her because they were going through the sackcloth and ashes lesbian sort of phase of their stuff. and she wasn't politically correct. And, well, she dressed in short skirts, she had long legs and wore dangly earrings, and she made certain, what were they called then? They were called, there was a name for sort of the neutered male, and Trevor Mallard and Steve Maharey ran around being snags, sensitive new age guys. And it really was the most sexist, appalling treatment that Christine Rankin got. And I just thought she'd have a good perspective on Maharey, wouldn't she? What do you think of that and what she had to say? And what do you think about Maharey and Dyson keeping their jobs when they've said we don't give a stuff about the code of conduct from the Public Service Commission? Rob Campbell, he wanted to go down, but still there is, well, I'd say corruption within our public service as long as Steve Maharey and Ruth Dyson are there. Sean, this goes to the character of those Labor people. They have none. Sean, rubbing the nose is also a sign of cocaine use. Not that I would know about that. Well, then how do you know about that? Sean, it was the earrings. Nice lady. Met her at a few political meetings. I think these public service people like Rob Campbell and the Farm Act guys should only be in charge of one company or portfolio at a time, not 2, 3 or 4. How can they run them to the best of their abilities if it's spread across so many different things? They don't run them. They just take the money. It's part of the gravy train. It's how you get a ticket on the gravy train. And I said yesterday, you think being a minister is the apex of someone's political career? You look at Steve Maharey. This is job for life stuff. This is what being a political mandarin in some ways is all about.